Order of the day number 1.
New Zealand Mission Trust Board Otamataha Empowering Bill, second reading.
I call the honourable member to Uraroa Flavel. Tēnā koe, Mr Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Ka nui te mihi kia koe tēnei rā. Mr Speaker, I move that the New Zealand Mission Trust Board Otamataha Empowering Bill be now read a second time. I would like to thank the members of the Māori Affairs Select Committee, the fine committee that is chaired by the Honourable Tauhinare, for the very prompt way in which they've dealt with the bill and recommended back to this House that it be passed with amendment. I note that the Select Committee received 14 submissions. The committee heard 8 submissions and we held all of our hearings in Tauranga. Mr Speaker, today this House moves history along, our debate helping to advance the goal of eventually transferring land in the Tauranga area from the New Zealand Mission Trust to the newly created Otamataha Trust. Mr Speaker, just over a week ago I stood with other members of this House at the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gate Pa, Pukehinahina. During the course of the day, we attended the military memorial service at Otamataha Mission Cemetery. So at that sacred site, surrounded by Pohutukawa and bordering on the highway north, it was a sort of a solemn reminder of a history that so many of us, so many New Zealanders have yet to actually know about. So headstones representing young lives stolen from their family tree, both British soldiers and mana whenua were buried side by side. That day added another story of the Waikato Wars alongside of the battles of Rangiriri, Waiari, Rangiaowhia, followed by Orako at the beginning of this month. In June of this year, Mr Speaker, the last major battle in the sequence, Te Ranga, also in the Tauranga area, will be commemorated. Mr Speaker, I wanted to set the New Zealand Mission Trust Board Otamataha Empowering Bill in this sort of context, because when the Select Committee attended the hearings in Tauranga, it was evident that the submitters had lived this history and brought their tūpuna with them into the room. So they continually told us, quote, "The history is well known. Those events have been talked about among our people since they occurred," end of quote. Stories were shared from the descendants of Kōrero, Hikareia and Hori Tūpaia. We were told about the legacy of the Koroua rangatira, such as Henare Taratoa, Hori Ngātai, and Rawiri Puhirake, all who lie there at Otamataha. The whānau kohu, the whānau te kani, the hapu ngai tū kaurangi, Ngāti Tapu, and te whānau a tauwhao. Mr Speaker, the Māori Party believes that a nation can only be as strong as its collective memory allows. Our past builds our present. And if we don't understand our history, we're pretty much like a leaf that doesn't know that it's a part of the tree. And so we come to this particular history, the history and the story of the New Zealand Mission Trust Board and its benevolent intentions in establishing a trust for the purpose of spiritually benefiting and instructing local Māori. So at the time, 1852, no doubt the Church Missionary Society had noble intentions. And indeed, many of the submissions noted that while the Church and its missionaries brought what they described as, quote, many good things to the tangata whenua of Tauranga, the so-called purchase of the land at Tauranga included Otamataha was never regarded by Māori as giving up their rights to the land. The Tauranga Moana Māori Trust Board spelled out the situation really clearly in their submission. They said, and I quote, "As the result of defending their lands at the battles of Pukehinahina and Te Ranga, tangata whenua were considered rebels and vast tracts of land were confiscated by the Crown. Included in the confiscated lands was the Otamataha site. The Crown, at its total discretion, indiscretion, vested the Otamataha lands in the Church Mission Society." Mr Speaker, 44 years after that land transaction executed by Archdeacon Brown, the residue of the land, including Otamataha, was transferred by the Church Mission Society to the New Zealand Mission Trust Board. Fast forward another century, and then in 1998, the trustees of that board, in recognition of the mana and the process by which the land was acquired from tangata whenua, they all resigned en masse. Mr. Speaker, it's a fascinating story which deserves to be told. It has all the elements of a great thriller: a land grab at the time of settlement under the authority of the missionaries, legislative stealth via the Religious, Charitable and Educational Trust Boards Incorporation Act 1884, a remorseful church which seeks a pathway for reconciliation, the mandate of the Waitangi Tribunal, who in 2004 found that the Crown was in breach of the treaty principle of active protection, and the generosity of the hapu of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho in seeking to work with the Crown to put right the wrongs. Mr. Speaker, today we open a new chapter in that thriller. The purpose of the New Zealand Mission Trust Board Otamataha Empowering Bill is to extinguish the New Zealand Mission Trust Board and to discharge its trustees. To effect this purpose, legislation is required to mandate the change in the trust and the beneficiaries, namely that which are the hapu of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho. So there is one other key element of this bill which requires some explanation. There was a call within some of the submissions for Ngai Tū Kairangi to be considered one of the beneficiaries alongside of Ngai Tamarawaho and Ngāti Tapu. The submission was from Ngai Tū Kairangi, and it outlined their support for the progression of the bill, while also noting their close whakapapa links to Ngai Tamarawaho and Ngāti Tapu. They told the Select Committee, quote, "We believe it is fundamentally necessary to include Ngai Tū Kairangi as one of the beneficiaries. To not address this issue leaves our hapu members distraught," end of quote. Mr. Speaker, the Select Committee took on the commitment to address this issue in good faith. We noted that when membership of the New Zealand Mission Trust had been given to hapu in the 1990s, Ngai Tū Kairangi had chosen to withdraw its involvement within that trust. We were also informed by the Waitangi Tribunal findings that the strength of the customary interest in the land had not been determined. So our recommendation to the House, therefore, recognises that the interest of Ngai Tū Kairangi must be balanced against the needs of the existing trustees and the deed of the new trust. The Otamataha Trust Board was amended in March 2014 to allow Ngai Tū Kairangi members to benefit through their whakapapa links to the historical hapu of Te Mata Rawaho, whose connections to the land are now recognised in the trust deed. The definition of Ngāti Tapu has also been expanded to take this whakapapa into account. The Select Committee therefore recommended that the bill should be amended to align it with the changes made in the trust deed. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to leave the last word on this bill to the Te Kohinga Reconciliation Network of Tauranga Moana. It was their contention that the bill will make a further contribution to the reconciliation healing, or the reconciliatory healing between Māori and the Crown and Māori and the Church in Tauranga Moana. Te Kohinga shared with the Select Committee a statement on the record from Archdeacon Brown, made prior to the land wars. He said, quote, "I am between the devil and the deep blue sea. In time, the government will require more land. To steer clear of giving offence to the powers that be, namely government, and at the same time to sustain our character as guardians of the natives, we will require much of the wisdom that cometh from above." Mr. Speaker, in the face of it, 150 years ago, the interests of the original owners were sacrificed, compromised, extinguished in favour of the powers that be. And today, we sanction an important move in restoring the Otamataha land to its rightful kaitiaki, and in doing so, offer the potential for reconciliation and resolution of the wider Te Papa Block issue in Tauranga. Under those conditions, I thank the members of the Māori Affairs Select Committee and officials for their help. We know that one more reading to go, and that will be done and dusted. I appreciate the help of all the Māori Affairs Select Committee, and I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Speaker.
I call the Honourable